never figured a simple mistake about which pool I could use would land me in the back of a police car. It all started as a misunderstanding, but it snowballed into a nightmare thanks to one power-tripping HOA rep. I was just trying to have a relaxing day, a quiet afternoon. Next thing I know, I'm in handcuffs, still in my wet swimming trunks, being accused of a crime. That feeling of complete helplessness, of your day and your sense of safety getting ripped away over something so small, that stays with you. And it all started on what was supposed to be a perfect summer afternoon. The day felt like a promise. It was one of those mid-July scorchers where the air's so thick you can chew it, and the sun just punishes the pavement. The sky was a perfect, cloudless blue, and really, the only thing to do was find some water and jump in. I'd been looking forward to this all week. Work had been a nightmare, just a constant stream of deadlines and meetings that left my brain completely fried. All I wanted was to float in some cool water, feel the sun on my face, and think about absolutely nothing. ID moved into this new housing development about 6 months ago. It's one of those giant, master-planned communities. A sprawling maze of neat suburban streets, houses that all look alike, and perfectly manicured lawns. The big selling point, what the realtor wouldn't shut up about, was the amenities. The whole development is broken up into smaller villages, each with its own vibe, but all under one giant HOA. My village is called Oak Haven. The brochure promised trails, a gym, and most importantly, a resort-style pool. That was a huge reason I moved here. The idea of having a mini vacation just a short walk from my front door was too good to pass up. The problem, as I was about to find out the hard way, was the layout. The entire development is a disorienting mess. Streets curve and loop back on themselves for no good reason. Every corner looks just familiar enough to be confusing. And the signage is, to put it nicely, terrible. Small, classy-looking wooden signs mark the different villages. Oak Haven, Willow Creek, Stonebridge. But they're so easy to miss. To make it worse, the architecture is brutally consistent. The community centers, where the pools are nearly impossible to tell apart. They're all the same beige stucco, same dark brown trim, same terracotta roof. So, that afternoon, with the promise of cool water calling my name, I grabbed a towel, a book I wasn't going to read, and my key fob. I decided to walk, figuring the fresh air would do me good. I headed out, following the sidewalk as it snaked through the neighborhood, lost in my own head, replaying some frustrating conversation from work. I was on complete autopilot. I remember making a turn down a path that seemed familiar. It led past a playground and then toward a community center that looked exactly like the one I remembered from my tour. There it was, beige stucco, brown trim, perfect hedges. I didn't see a sign for Oak Haven, but I didn't see a sign for anything else either. In my heat-dazed, work-fried state, my brain just registered pool. And that was good enough for me. It looked right. I walked up to the gate, swiped my key fob, and nothing happened. I figured I just held it wrong, so I jiggled it and tried again. Still nothing. Now, a more careful person might have stopped right there. But I was hot, tired, and had a one-track mind. Just then, someone walked out of the pool area. As the gate swung open, I just caught it before it latched, gave the person a nod, and walked in. I didn't sneak. I didn't climb a fence. I just walked through an open gate that I thought was just being finicky. I had no idea that this simple act was my first step into a legal and emotional minefield. I had just trespassed. I was an Oak Haven resident standing in the Willow Creek pool area, and my perfect afternoon was about to come to a violent, screeching halt. The pool area was an oasis. That smell of chlorine and sunscreen hung in the air, the official perfume of summer. The sound of splashing and kids yelling Marco Polo was the perfect backdrop for doing absolutely nothing. It was idyllic, exactly what I'd been dreaming of all week. I found an empty lounge chair, threw my towel on it, and for a few minutes, I just sat there, letting the tension melt out of my shoulders. I slipped off my sandals and eased myself into the water. It was shockingly cool, the perfect antidote to the heat. I floated on my back for what felt like forever, my ears under the water, the world muffled into a gentle hum. Eyes closed, sun on my face. I was completely at peace. And that's when the shadow fell over me. At first, I didn't notice, but then the warmth on my face was just gone. I opened my eyes, blinking. Standing over me at the edge of the pool was a woman. She was probably in her late 50s, wearing khaki shorts and a crisp polo shirt with some little logo on it. She had a clipboard in one hand and a look on her face that could curdle milk. Her lips were pressed into a thin, disapproving line, and her eyes were narrowed with an intensity that was instantly unsettling. She wasn't just looking at me. She was sizing me up, like a hawk spotting a mouse. Still floating, I smiled, trying to be friendly. "Sorry, am I in the way?" Her voice was sharp, with zero warmth. "I don't recognize you." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I treaded water, a little thrown off. "Oh hey, I just moved into the development a few months ago," I said, still trying to be nice. "I live over in Oakhaven." I thought that would be it. Simple explanation, right? Wrong. The woman's face hardened. "This is the Willow Creek pool," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, like I was a toddler who'd wandered off. "This pool is for Willow Creek residents only." The peaceful feeling I had moments before vanished, replaced by a hot flush of embarrassment. Other people were starting to look over. The happy sounds of the pool seemed to die down. I suddenly felt incredibly exposed. "Oh, I am so sorry," I said, and I meant it. I honestly had no idea. These community centers all look the same. It was an honest mistake. I started paddling toward the steps, ready to grab my stuff and disappear. "I'll get out of your hair right now." But she wasn't done. My apology wasn't enough. She wanted a spectacle. "I need to see your key fob," she demanded, her voice getting louder. "Look, it was a mistake," I said, trying to stay calm, though a knot of annoyance was tightening in my stomach. "I'm leaving. There's no need for this. I am the HOA pool monitor," she announced, puffing out her chest. "And I am asking to see your key fob to verify your residency, or lack thereof." By now, I was on the steps. I felt a dozen pairs of eyes on my back. My face was burning. This was absurd. I walked over to my chair, leaving wet footprints on the hot concrete, picked up my key fob and held it out to her. "Here," I said, my voice tight. "It's an Oakhaven fob. I told you I was in the wrong place." She snatched it out of my hand and marched to the gate sensor. Of course, nothing happened. A smug little smile played on her lips. She turned back to me, holding up the fob like it was Exhibit A in a murder trial. "Just as I thought," she declared to the whole pool. "It doesn't work. You don't belong here. You are trespassing." The word trespassing just hung there in the humid air. Felt so criminal. I was a homeowner. I paid my dues. I made a simple mistake, and now I was being publicly shamed by a woman on a massive power trip. The situation had gone from a simple mix-up to a public spectacle, and I had a sinking feeling it was about to get a whole lot worse. My mind was racing. How did things get so out of control so fast? One minute, I'm blissfully floating, the next I'm being publicly accused of a crime. Trespassing. It sounded so deliberate. I hadn't done anything on purpose. "Listen," I said, trying my best to sound reasonable, even though my heart was starting to pound. "I've apologized. I told you it was a mistake. I am leaving. There is absolutely no reason to make a scene." I started grabbing my towel and book, my movements getting jerky. All I wanted was to get out of there, away from all the eyes fixed on me. Some people looked sympathetic. Others just stared, like they were watching reality TV. But the HOA monitor, this guardian of the Willow Creek pool, wasn't about to let her big catch get away. "It's a little late for that," she snapped, physically stepping in front of me to block my path to the gate. "You're on private property without authorization. I need your name and address." I stopped. I looked at her, then at the gate just a few feet away. I could have just pushed past her. Maybe I should have. But something inside me just bristled. Leaving now felt like admitting I'd done something wrong. Felt like letting her win. I remembered reading up on HOAs before I bought my house. I knew she wasn't a cop. She couldn't legally detain or arrest me. That power belongs to law enforcement. Her only real leverage was to ask me to leave and call the police if I refused. "I'm not giving you my name," I said firmly. "You have no right to demand it. I'm a resident. I made a mistake, and I am leaving. End of story. Please get out of my way." Her face went blotchy red. Her eyes widened, like she couldn't believe anyone would ever dare question her. "Get out of your way?" She shrieked so loudly that a couple of kids by the pool started crying. "I don't think so. You've refused to identify yourself. You are a trespasser, and I am calling the police." And just like that, she pulled out her phone. It was completely surreal. The sun was still shining, the water was still sparkling, but the whole atmosphere was now toxic. I stood there, frozen, as she dialed 911. Her voice was full of fake urgency, a performance for me and everyone else. "Yes, I need to report a trespasser at the Willow Creek Community Pool," she said into the phone, her voice shaking with manufactured fear. "He's a man. He refuses to identify himself. He's become very aggressive." My jaw dropped. Aggressive? I was standing there in swim trunks holding a wet towel. I was about as threatening as a puppy. "No, he's not armed, but he is refusing to leave," she continued. "I am an official representative of the Homeowners Association. We need officers dispatched immediately." She hung up with a flourish, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. "The police are on their way," she announced. "You'd better not go anywhere." Now I was really and truly trapped. If I left before the cops came, I'd look guilty. It would prove every lie she just told them. My stupid, honest mistake had been escalated to a 911 call where I was painted as some aggressive intruder. I had to stay. I had to wait and tell my side of the story, praying that actual police officers would see how ridiculous this was. So I waited. It was the longest 10 minutes of my life. I just stood there, dripping and humiliated. The HOA monitor stood by the gate like a prison guard, arms crossed, glaring at me. The other residents tried to go back to their day, but the fun was gone. The air was thick with tension, and I just stood there, shivering, not from the cold, but from rage, fear, and sheer disbelief. How on earth did it come to this? You always know when a police car arrives. It's a sound that changes the whole mood. As the cruiser pulled up, a hush fell over the pool. 2 officers got out, moving with a deliberate, professional calm. One was older, with a weathered face. The other was younger, more rigid. The HOA monitor sprang into action, meeting them at the gate with her clipboard ready. She immediately launched into her story, gesticulating wildly, pointing at me, her face a mask of righteous fury. She was controlling the narrative from the jump, painting me as the villain. After a few minutes, the 2 officers walked over to me. Their expressions were unreadable. The older one spoke first, his voice calm but firm. "Sir, we've received a trespassing complaint," he said. "This lady with the HOA says she asked you to leave and you refused. Can you tell me what's going on?" Finally, by chance, I took a deep breath, trying to sound as calm as possible. "Officer, thank you for coming, because this is a huge misunderstanding." I began. "I live in this development, in Oakhaven, just a few streets over. I'm new, and the community centers for Oakhaven and this one, Willow Creek, are identical. I honestly didn't realize I was at the wrong pool." I explained everything, how I'd offered to leave immediately, how she had blocked my way, and how I only stayed because she called them. To prove it, I pulled out my wallet and handed him my driver's license. "You can see my address right there. I'm part of this community." The officer looked at my license, then at his partner. This was it, I thought, the moment of clarity. But I had completely misunderstood their job. They weren't there to mediate. They were there to enforce the law based on the facts in front of them. The officer looked back at me. "Okay, I see your address is in Oakhaven, but right now you're physically in Willow Creek. So you are on private property where you're not a resident. This woman, who represents the property, says she asked you to leave. Did you leave?" "Well, no, but..." He cut me off. "Sir, it's a simple question. Yes or no. Were you asked to leave?" My heart sank. I saw where this was going. The nuance, my intent. None of it mattered. Yes, I whispered. I was asked to leave. And you didn't leave? I was trying to explain. She called you, so I waited for you, pleaded. The officer shook his head slowly. Sir, under our state's law, criminal trespassing isn't about why you were here. It's about being on property without authorization and then failing to leave after being told to by an owner or their agent. You've admitted you were asked to leave and you didn't. This lady wants to press charges. I stared at him, stunned. Press charges? For what? For getting confused about a swimming pool? This is insane. The younger officer spoke for the first time. You need to calm down, sir. But I couldn't. My world was tilting. The HOA monitor stood a few feet away, watching with a look of pure triumph. She had won. The older officer sighed. Look, it's her right to press charges. For now, you're being detained for criminal trespassing. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Detained. I looked around at the families now scrambling to pack up and leave, at the sun still shining as if mocking my whole life falling apart. Turn around and place your hands behind your back, the younger officer said. I was in total shock. I felt the cold metal of the handcuffs snap onto my wrists. That click was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I was in my wet swim trunks, barefoot, being arrested in front of everyone. They led me out of the pool, past the smug face of the HOA monitor, and into the back of the police car. It was a walk of shame I'll never forget. This wasn't real. Couldn't be. The inside of a police car is exactly as grim as you'd imagine. Hard plastic seat, smell of stale coffee, and a thick plexiglass wall that separates you from the world. No handles on the inside. It's a cage. The ride to the station was silent, just the crackle of the radio. I watched my neighborhood blur past the window, seeing normal people living normal lives, feeling like I was in another dimension. Is this going to give me a criminal record? Do I need a lawyer? The humiliation was a physical weight, pressing down on me. At the station, I was led into a small, cold, windowless room. I was still damp and started shivering, and an officer gave me a thin, coarse blanket. I sat there for what felt like hours, replaying the whole thing in my head. The peaceful float, the woman's accusatory voice, the cold click of the handcuffs. I had trusted that common sense would win. I felt so naive. Finally, the door opened. A different officer came in, a sergeant, older, with a weary but intelligent look in his eyes. He sat down across from me with a file. So, he began, his voice low. You had quite a day at the pool. I just nodded. Tell me what happened, he said. From the beginning. So I told him the whole story, for what felt like the 10th time. The confusing layout, the honest mistake, the immediate apology, the woman's escalation. He just listened, really listened, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. He swiveled in his chair, typed on a computer in the corner, and then turned the monitor toward me. It was a satellite map of my development. This is your address in Oakhaven, right? He asked, pointing. I nodded. And this, he said, moving the cursor a short distance, is the Willow Creek Pool. They're less than half a mile apart, and the community centers look identical on this map. He made a quick, authoritative phone call to verify some details about the master HOA. After he hung up, he leaned back and let out a long sigh. It was the sigh of a man who has seen way too much petty nonsense. Well, he said, looking straight at me, it seems pretty clear what happened here. You made a simple mistake and ran into a community volunteer on a power trip. The relief that washed over me was so powerful I felt my knees go weak. Validation. Sanity. Someone finally got it. The sergeant stood up. We're not filing charges, he stated. By the strict letter of the law in this situation, the arresting officers had grounds based on the complaint. But given that this was clearly a non-malicious mistake and a gross overreaction from the complainant, the department is not pursuing this. This is over. He left and came back with a key. He walked behind me and unlocked the handcuffs. The feeling of the cold metal falling away from my wrists was one of the most profound moments of freedom in my entire life. I'm sorry for the mix-up, the sergeant said. It wasn't a huge apology, but it was an acknowledgement, and it was more than I ever expected. The officer who drove you here will take you back. There was no apology from the HOA. No call from the monitor. Just the quiet, unceremonious act of being driven back to the now empty Willow Creek pool. My towel and book were still on the chair where I'd left them in what felt like another lifetime. I got in my car and just sat there for a long time, my hands shaking. Driving home felt surreal. When I walked through my own front door, the relief was so overwhelming my legs felt weak. I was home. I was safe. But I was also changed. The experience left a scar. It stripped away a layer of my belief that things are usually fair and that misunderstandings can be solved with reason. It showed me how fast one person with a tiny bit of power can turn your life into a nightmare. That day, I learned a terrifying lesson. Your intentions don't always matter. I learned that in the eyes of the law, context can sometimes be stripped away until all that's left is a cold, hard, and misleading set of facts. Procedurally correct is not the same as morally right. The whole thing was a nightmare, and it shows how easily a simple misunderstanding can be twisted by someone who desperately needs to feel important. It's scary to think that any of us could end up in a similar spot, with our freedom on the line over something so trivial. It's a reminder that you need to know your rights, but also that sometimes, even when you're in the right, you can still lose. This experience left me angry and humiliated, but also determined to share my story. What happened to me was a gross injustice, born from confusing community planning and one person's abusive behavior. If you've ever had a crazy encounter with an HOA or been in a situation that escalated for no good reason, share your story in the comments below. Let's talk about it. And if you think what happened to me was wrong, hit that subscribe button and share this video. You never know who might need to see it. Thanks for listening.